Penguin Football Podcast. As always, I'm live from Tampa, Sal Guardo. With me, as always, is Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Hess, former football director of operations Dan Kopp, and former defensive lineman Kyle Searle. We have a very special guest with us, newly hired Youngstown State football head coach, who will get a formal introduction here shortly. But first, as always, follow us on Instagram, Whitetown Penguin Podcast, and we are live on YouTube Live. Please get your questions and comments there. We'll answer them straight on the show. Any questions you have for our guest, you could see who it is. You could ask them there now as well. For the show, it's been quite a hiatus. We are back. A few things we are going to review and catch you up on. As we all know, the Penguins did beat UNI in a thrilling overtime fashion, 39-38. However, that is leaving the Penguins with a 4-8 finish to end the year. But we will update you on the transfer portal additions, a lot of coaching changes with the staff and in the conference. And we will interview one of those new staff members here today. And we'll give you just our quick takes on last season and next season. But first, let's hear from Kyle Searle.
Hey, thanks, Sal. So like Sal said, it's been a minute since we've been here. But once again, the show is always brought to you by Leiden Oil Company, leading Penguin supporters in the Valley for over 100 years. Paul, Laura, Paul Jr., Jen Leiden believe they're fueling the best for success. So you got any lubricating needs, just go to Leiden Oil Company. They'll point you to my direction. We'll take care of you.
Thank you, Kyle. Transfer portal, a lot of different things happening. We haven't talked since the window opened and closed. Curdy, catch us up.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. I know we're going to get over to Coach Z here real quick, but, it's kind of the hottest topic that continues to be the hottest topic every single offseason in college football is this transfer portal. So we just try to do a little bit of research for everybody this week, give you guys some of the guys that have committed to us, as well as some of the guys that we've confirmed have left the program and committed somewhere else. So starting with the outgoing, leaving YSU, hopefully these people you know a little bit about, and they're on their way out. They've committed elsewhere. Probably our wide receiver 2 last year, Cyrus Traw, has committed to West Virginia. Starting corner for us multiple seasons, Jalen Castleberry has committed to Temple. Wyatt Minor, offensive lineman, committed to West Virginia. 2 backup quarterbacks, Bryce Schondelmeyer and Max Blanc. Bryce is headed to Dayton. I think his dad's a coach in the Dayton area, so good fit for him over there. Max Blanc transferred to D2 Lenore Rhine. Pretty good program, even though it's Division II down there. And then DeJuan Martin, D lineman. Not sure if he's an edge or an interior D lineman for us. He's committed to Wyoming. A couple names who are incoming to us this year. Colin Vaughn is a D lineman from Utah State. Jeremiah Piper, DB from Western Illinois. Kylan Wilson, wide receiver from Slippery Rock, a D2 playoff contender last year. Peyton Bjork, who's Ohio State athletic director's son, committed to us from Tarleton State. He's a wide receiver. Caleb Taylor, DB, Ohio Dominican, another good Division II program, has committed to us. Dane Hodge is another DB from Tulsa. Isaac Perkins, offensive lineman out of Colgate in New York, FCS. Nathan Boozer, long snapper from Walsh, D2, another decent level competition Division II program. Justin Wimpy, DB from Tiffin. And last one is Tahir Mills, a running back out of East Stroudsburg. A couple transfer things just to note. We have close relationships with these guys. We talk NIL with some of these players. These players have been in the program for a while. So just kind of wanted to keep you up to date on Diamante Diggs. Diamante Diggs transferred out of Youngstown State 2 years ago, played at Coastal Carolina, had a really successful season last year. He's transferring again to Florida State. So I don't know, Youngstown State, Coastal Carolina, Florida State, they're all about the same level right now, considering how down the ACC is. But then Alex Howard, our linebacker from the playoffs a couple years ago, he had an All-American season for Duke last year. And he racked up a ton of tackles, was an honorable mention All-American from the College Sports Network. 80 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. It's hard to see those good players leave our program. But it just feels vengeful, to kind of wish those guys bad. You never want to see them get hurt. And, you kind of appreciate the time that they had. And specifically Alex Howard, in my opinion, I don't know, we don't even have to hit on this because I've probably talked too much already, but Alex Howard is a guy that invested into our program, got us to the playoffs, and we made a playoff run with him. And just kind of the landscape right now is this guy leaves because he had a great season, and kind of wish him nothing but the best. But that's kind of where we are with transfer portal. I know things are always changing. I think we have another window in April. So we'll kind of see what we're going to have, coming into the program during that time.
Crazy to think about. But as I always say, the portal giveth and taketh. And I think fortunate for us that giveth more than it taketh. And nice jab you snuck in there at me.
It's been too long that I haven't hated on the ACC, because they didn't make the playoffs really, so I wasn't really paying attention to them. Oh, there's another one. My bad.
Multiple teams of that conference went.
Yeah, well, the Power Three is pretty good this time.
That's
my bad. It's Power 4.
YSU made some coaching changes, whether it was our decision or not. Just to go through it, we had parted ways with offensive coordinator Coach Troy, who had been with us since the beginning of the Coach Phillips era. In comes Mike Yursich. Did I say that right? Yursich. And wide receiver Coach Jelani Barasa, friend of the show, friend of all. He is going back to his hometown in Miami for FIU. Congrats to him. And we have a new corners coach as Christian Dukes leaves, and he is being replaced by Youngstown legend Michael Zordage. Dan, first, tell us about this offensive coordinator change.
Well, I think it's been kind of a hot topic in the area with Coach Yursich coming on. Obviously, the places he's been is really impressive. And Coach Z, we talked with him a little bit before we came on air. Oklahoma State, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State. I mean, he's been, at places everyone dreams of working, and he's put up numbers. He had some stats at all of those places. So I think it's kind of an impressive. We got him here. He is an Ohio guy, though. He's a Euclid native. And come to find out, his wife is from Youngstown. So there is a draw there. I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm sure Kurt will probably have a little bit more insight on this too, as to what he's going to do with Bo Brungard. How will that step? Because the quarterbacks he worked with, Justin Fields, Sam Erlinger, I think I should pronounce that guy that was at Texas. Bo had a breakout year. Can he take Bo that next step? And I think obviously his resume speaks to all of that and more. So it's exciting to have a guy like him coming to take over our offense.
No doubt. Chris Perry, new receivers coach.
Learning a little bit about Chris Perry. Before I talk about him, Jelani Barasa is a close friend of the show. Obviously, we're going to be very biased. We miss Jelani. We will miss Jelani. We wish Jelani nothing but the best. So it's hard to say that we brought in a new coach and upgraded somebody who's really close to us. But learning a little bit more about Chris Perry, he's got great playing experience. He was with the program at West Virginia for 4 years. He was all over the place, and he's been at Teal D3. He's been at Slippery Rock most recently. They had a playoff run last year. They lost to Ferris State, who was the eventual national champion in D2. He's been at Pitt. He's been at some big time programs. He's been at FCS programs. We've had him here with us. I think for 4 or 5 years, he was with our program. So his familiarity as a coach in his just very young career, I think he's only about 8, 9, 10 years in, as well as his playing experience, I think is something that's going to really, boost that receiver room, who's really kind of looking for another step up guy. Right. And Max has been on the show. He's talked to us. And so, how quickly is this coach Perry, going to clash with Max, right? Because Max talks about how, you kind of want to butt heads for a little bit so you guys respect each other and Max can develop a little bit. So how quickly is that going to happen? And as I was writing out and learning a little bit more about Chris Perry, and no disrespect to him whatsoever, Max is a senior, right? Like that's Max's room. So Max and Chris Perry, if they can have a good relationship, they're really going to rock that room. And I look forward to learning more about him. So I think that room's going to be in good hands, despite one of our close friends leaving, and we wish him nothing but the best because I'm glad he's heading home. So shout out JB, man, you're awesome.
Love it. Well, let's transition. Let's get into it. Without further ado, Cop, do the honors and give us a formal introduction of our guest.
Yes, yes, sir, Sal. Thanks. Obviously, this is a tremendous honor for me to just welcome a friend back to Youngstown. And it's interesting that I knew of everyone knew and knows Michael Zordich in Youngstown. So when you grow up in Youngstown, and I was a young guy when Michael was coming up through the Cheney High School. And Coach Z, we got to remember that Kurt and Kyle and Sal, they're young, and Cheney, Cheney, it's changed over the years as most things do in life. But in the day, in the 70s and through the early to mid 80s, there was really one high school that turned out All-Americans and NFL players, and that was Cheney High School. And everyone can, nowadays those change and people can argue, but you look up the records, and the Cheney High School is alone in that category. So there was a neat tradition as I was a kid, and my dad was coaching at Cheney when I was really little. But when you went down the hallways towards Cheney's gym, there was a tradition. They had these life-size pictures. If you became an All-American and played at Cheney, you got a life-size. I'm talking this was a huge framed portrait. And this is All-Americans, not a guy who just happened to go to college. So our guest is one of those guys. And the names were a litany of stars in college at that time. De Niro's, who played at Alabama and Texas A&M, the Kavanaugh's played at Pitt, the Pelusi's who played at Pitt. I might be missing a few names, but Jerry O. But you had Michael Zordich, and Coach Z was played on both sides of the ball at Cheney under the legendary coach Ed Mady, and was probably one of the top recruits in the state of Ohio. And we'll ask him a little later, but he chose Penn State, which no argument there. It was a great choice for him, and ended up being, I believe it was called the hero position there at Penn State, a safety kind of hybrid guy, and was on the 1982 national championship team, was a 1985 All-American at Penn State. Okay. And then he got drafted, I believe, by the Chargers, and ended up spending 12 years in the NFL. And for a number of those years, I think about 9 between the Phoenix Cardinals, they were back then, and the Philadelphia Eagles, Coach Z was a starter. Okay. This was, he had close to 600 tackles, 20 interceptions, and I believe 6 sacks in his NFL career. So this is a guy who not only was the man, and everyone knew who Michael Zordich was in Youngstown. And then he goes to Penn State and just accomplishes great things. And then there's a starter and just a force playing safety in the NFL. And it's kind of been really cool for me to get to know him as someone who I idolized growing up, and rightfully so, because he embodied all the things that Youngstown is, and the toughness and the dedication. And we watched him coach at YSU when we were there, Sal and I, when he was there, both with Coach Haycock and Coach Wolford. And, he's gone on to coach in the NFL. He's with the Eagles. He was at Michigan with Coach Harbaugh. He's been in the MAC, most recently Central Michigan there. He has 3 children. We'll let him talk about them here in a minute. But his son Michael was a captain at Penn State. His son Alex was a quarterback at Buffalo. He's got a great Italian restaurant down there in the Smoky Hollow, Yosteria. And I don't know much about his daughter Aiden and his wife Cynthia. I know them, but I think from those of us from Youngstown and our Kurt, Kyle, and Sal, Coach Z, they love Youngstown. They're from Youngstown anyways, even though they didn't grow up here. They're Youngstown guys. This is a legend to have on our show, and we're just blessed to have you here, man. So we're looking forward to it. So, Coach Z, the floor is yours. If you give us a little update about the family and life with you.
Yeah, Popper, thank you for that. You're a hell of a guy. Family is doing well. You mentioned Aiden, my daughter Aiden. She has given us 2 wonderful grandchildren, and number 3 on the way. And my wife Cindy and I are extremely happy and blessed to have that. And Alex, how about Alex is a father, if you can believe that. So and Michael just got married, and so everybody's in good shape, and the family is doing well. But we're all very excited to be back home again. My daughter's down in North Carolina, but she gets up here enough. And Cindy and I are extremely excited to be back part of Youngstown, and certainly be back with the Penguins. Can't tell you how excited we are.
And can I share one more quick story, Sal? Sorry. We've had the Godfather on the show here, Coach Jim Trussell, President Trussell, and he mentioned he and I were maybe sharing a cigar once here or there, and your name came up just during conversation, and he said when Z was coming back from Penn State or in the NFL, and I was the coach at YSU, he would always come back. He'd work out at the stadium. He'd spend time with our coaches and our players. He was always willing to talk to the guys about, if you want to be in the NFL, here's what it takes. And so I think it just speaks volumes to, who you are and what you mean to this town and obviously the program. So I thought I'd share that because, as Sal says, and Sal's been on the Godfather's podcast, so not all of us can say that. So we got to give it, when the Godfather talks about you, it's even more telling about the man you are.
Well, the cool thing about that is my office there's every day I go sit down now at Youngstown State, my office, there's a big picture of Jim Trussell. So it's a great reminder of greatness and the things that we have to achieve there. He is an unbelievable guy, but yes, I did go out. He gave me the damn key to the weight room for 6 years. I mean, that was my place to work out every off season. And he was just an unbelievable guy. Still is. I gotta hook up with him. It's been a little bit since I've seen him, but we were very fortunate in Youngstown to have him, without a doubt.
Well, before I dive into the first question for you, I did happen to touch base with the safety coach at the Kansas City Chiefs, who's going to be playing for his third straight Super Bowl, and he had a quote for you. Your boy Donald, he said, "Coach Z was the first one to ever teach me football, X's and O's scheme. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for him. He's the absolute best."
Well,
I think you coached him in high school, right?
I have known Donald since he was knee high. Him and my son Alex, they grew up together, best friends. Just hell of a kid. He gets the game. He gives me some credit, but that kid gets the game. He gets the game of football, and God bless him. How about that? 3 Super Bowls in a row, and he was unbelievable kid, unbelievable friend, his family, and he's certainly he's a hell of a coach. He's just born to do it, big time.
Yeah. Well, first question.
I got to coach him certainly in high school, but I got to coach him his senior year at Youngstown State, which was really cool.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
on your coaching career thus far, what coaches or players, you may have even mentioned one, had the biggest influence on you?
Well, certainly the biggest influence, I think, for me was Joe Paterno. Just a tremendous human being, and just loved him. Loved the guy, and I certainly don't like what they did to him over there. But his memory in me will live forever, and for a lot of us Penn Staters, he has been a light for us, and certainly a great guy. I can name a ton of guys. I was played a long time, and I met a lot of great people, a lot of great coaches, a lot of great players. But the one guy that I really enjoyed playing for, was Emmett Thomas. He was our defensive coordinator in Philly, and the trust that he had in me, I truly appreciated. I mean, and he let me just run the ship, and that says something about a guy to be able to trust people the way he did, and I really respected him for that. And to this day, just we're good friends, and he's a superhuman being as well.
Love that, Curdy. Muted.
Yeah, Coach. Hey, talking a little bit about your playing days, both at Penn State and in the NFL. I always like to ask these questions. Did you ever model your game off of anybody at that time? Did you ever, look at somebody specific and say you wanted to play like them? And then, second part of the question is, what did your teammates say about you as a player?
Well, growing up, my favorite player was an offensive guy, Larry Brown for Washington Redskins. So I just played the game. I worked hard, I practiced hard, and I just played the game. And I looked up. There's a lot of people I looked up to and respected, but as far as any one single person that I wanted to be, no, I just was me. And the second part. What was the second question you asked?
Second part was, what did your teammates say about you?
Oh, I would say they just what I just said. Just hard worker, disciplined for the team. It was about team. It was about team, and that's what it's about. And I would hope they would say that, and I think they would.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Coach, it looks like you got your start into coaching at the high school level. You obviously coached Donald and your son, and then you made the jump straight to the NFL. You were able to get linked up with the NFL, and then you've had a pretty successful run in college. What prompted you to start coaching at those levels and making that big move? And how did you have the in at the Eagles? Obviously, you played for them for a little bit, but that's still a big jump from high school to the NFL.
Yeah, well, at the end of my career, there's a lot of people that said, "Michael, you got to coach. Or, Michael, you got to stay here and stay in personnel." And quite frankly, I was just done playing football, and I needed a break from it. And our last year, we stunk. We were 3-13. And it was just bad, and I just needed a blow. I needed a break, so I stepped away from the game, volunteered my time at Cardinal Mooney. Not even my alma mater, Cheney, but Don Butchie was the head coach. He's my uncle, and he called me over one day, says, "Talk to the football team," and I never left. I never left, and it was pure joy. I got to coach my kids all through the process, and then a gentleman by the name of Jim Johnson, and not the Jim Johnson from Miami that coached the Cowboys when I was playing, but the Jim Johnson that coached me in Arizona. And then when I got done playing, he became the defensive coordinator at Philly. And he was a superhuman being as well. He's like a father figure. He's a really good dude. And my son Alex was a junior. I'll never forget. I'm like, okay, all right, what am I going to do now? What's going to happen? So I wrote Jim a letter. And, I said I wanted to get back in the game, and that was my connection to the Philadelphia Eagles because he was a great defensive coordinator there. And in 2009, I had left, and that's how it started. And he got me started, Jim Johnson. And unfortunately for Jim and for all of us, he had cancer. He couldn't beat it the second time, and shit. I don't think I spent 3 weeks with the man, and then he was gone, and that's how it all started. And from there it was 4 years in Philly, the 14 at YSU, and then the last 10 years up in Michigan. 6 with the Wolverines, and the last 4 with Central Michigan. And Cindy and I just got back from good old Mount Pleasant and emptied our little apartment, our little house, I guess I should say, and I got 10 years of Michigan sitting in my house. Anybody want to come over and grab some shit? Come on over.
Don't take Kurt up on that. He's going to be over there. He loves gear. I do too. But
I don't care what it is. I'll wear it.
That's a great story. I know that we're excited to have you on this YSU staff. Youngstown's excited. We hope that this is a long run for you in your hometown. So thank you, Coach.
No, thank you, Kyle. I'm excited. The family's excited. Like I said, we're here, definitely.
DK.
Yeah, Coach Z, got a quick question for you here. And before I do, a couple of shout outs with some guys we should mention that, Coach Aycock, when you came on with him for that spring in 09 and obviously Coach Wolford when they brought you back. So two other YSU coaches along with Coach Tress and Coach Phillips that, brought you back here. So they deserve some credit too, and didn't want to forget about them. But my question is that, when you were coming out of Cheney, there was a succession of guys from Cheney that went right to Pitt. I remember Johnny Majors being here in town and the Kavanaughs and the Pelusi's playing at Pitt, won a national championship there in '76. But, was there any kind of pressure for you to go to Pitt, or what made you go to Penn State when there was that kind of, I don't know, maybe there was an unwritten rule, all the Cheney guys had to go to Pitt. So.
Well, you certainly the connection with Ed Mady and his brother Bobby at Pitt, and yes, I visited Pitt on the way home from Pitt. I said, I'm going to Pitt. I mean, it was the backyard. It felt like home. It was just like being here in Youngstown. But then I made a visit to State College, and and then Joe made a visit to the house, and really that was it. I only took 3 visits. I went to Ohio State, and that was a great visit. And I think I was there with Bobby Maggs, if you remember Bobby from Cardinal Mooney. And it was, but Joe came to the house, and Joe is the reason I went to Penn State, and that's how that went down.
Well, real quick, a friend of mine and his son played at YSU, Jimmy Coates, who was at Penn State after you. But when I brought your name up one time, this is a guy from Trumbull County. For the rest of the guys on the show, his son Jake played at YSU. And Jimmy was an underclassman when Coach Z was finishing up there. And he said, man, everyone just loved Michael Zordich, and he treated us underclassmen with respect and helped us out. And I was a guy from the Valley, and he looked out for me. So, just again, goes to show the type of guy that Coach Phillips, brought back to us again. A Youngstown legend, but just a great man. And I know he's going to motivate our guys. He's going to encourage them. And as Donald said, you heard Donald Delicio say that he loves Coach Z, and I know our players are going to love playing for him. So it's just really another story, no surprise, but just another little story about you, Coach Z, and the people you help, and why we just love having you back here. So thank you.
Curdy.
Yeah, Coach, kind of transitioning a little bit more to YSU stuff now. I mean,
Thank
we've
you.
talked about we've talked about your wealth and variety of experience in the coaching realm, and just in your experience, and we talk about culture a lot here on this show and what Coach Phillips does purposefully, and Ohio State being in Columbus right now, you kind of seeing all those seniors who were draft eligible come back and play, right? And they kind of develop this brotherhood. So my question is, in your opinion, on your successful teams that you've been on, what types of things do those teams do to create that culture and create that brotherhood that ultimately leads to wins? And that's kind of what we try to build, starting from the podcast every single year. So what kind of purposeful things do those teams do that create that winning culture?
Well, number one, a great strength coach. That guy means a whole hell of a lot to a program. And, I think Youngstown has, I've only been here, on the clock, really only about a week. But you need that. And I've seen that. And then, just the culture of the locker room. The kids, because it's a lot different now, guys. As you know, here today, gone tomorrow is for real in college football now. The development part of college football is not 100% anymore. It's probably about 60-40, and it's really difficult. And, so you have to navigate this portal. You have to navigate it twice a year, and you don't get to develop relationships with the portal guys. I mean, you're having dinner with them, and you're hoping you sign them in less than a week or 2 weeks, because they're going other places as well. So you got to measure the character of these guys. They've got to have great character.
For sure.
And you don't know the work ethic. Coaches will tell you, but it's a tricky thing to get through. So, but the locker room is key. You know, the guys that we bring in, that's where it's at. And I think Kurt and Kyle can tell you, if you don't have a great locker room, you're not going to have a great team. And what I have felt in the short time that I've been here is, you know, I know Youngstown, that you guys lost a lot of players last year. I mean, holy smokes, you know. And it looks like this year that this past couple of weeks that we brought in some really good players, and it feels, well, again, it's a short period of time, but it feels like a really good, tight-knit unit, a group that there is a good culture in the locker room, and that's where it's at. You know, I go back to my playing days at Penn State. You know,
I think we lost him.
Lost him?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was about to get good, too.
Well, I'll wait for him to log us. What's that?
That was about to get good, too.
Right.
Shoot him a text.
We'll wait for Coach to get back on here. Let me give him a call.
Yeah, I agree. That was about to get good. We were about to get a little Penn State locker room insight back when men were men, you know, when locker rooms, you knew you had a guy in. You know, it was interesting that I remember when Coach Z came there to meet with Coach Aycock in the spring of '09, and I'm thinking, this guy doesn't need to interview. I mean, this guy's like a living legend, you know, only about 10 years removed from the NFL. And he was humble, and he was like, I would just love an opportunity. And thankfully, Coach Aycock brought him on. He was there that spring. And then, you know, the Eagles hired him on. I think he played for Ray Rhodes when he was with the Eagles. I don't know if Buddy Ryan was the guy when he was in Phoenix at the time. I'm not sure, but I think there we go, Coach Z.
Yeah, we got him back.
Oh, we lost him again.
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely want to hear what he has to say about the culture. I know we've mentioned on the show our junior year, Kurt and mine, just junior year was probably the most talented team we've had. And then our senior year, we were probably better because we were more of a tight-knit unit and we did everything together. I mean,
that 2000, so your junior year was the 2012, right? So that would have been Mark Pratt, Lamar Mady came in, right? Nick DeCracker.
Yeah. But senior year, I mean, we would spend hours in the locker room after practice just hanging out.
Yep.
You know, my senior year, I was thinking as he was talking, like Shane would come in and BS with everybody. Carm would come in, Coach Kopp, you would come in, like coaches were coming in with their position groups, still chatting about things, still talking about things. It could be what you were BSing about on the field, or it could be like, hey, you might see this at practice tomorrow, you know? And I felt like they were more present our senior year, the coaches, because they had such good relationships with everybody. And I mean, Searle and I talked about it the one time. I think it was Northern Iowa. It was during a special teams meeting. I think Searle
it was Northern Iowa.
And like he was about to head over, and it was me, Wolf, and Shane. And Wolf was like, "No, Searle, stay here. Like, let's just chat." And we talked about life for 20 minutes while Louie was talking. And I was like, "You guys are normal, regular people. You're not just." You know, people who are trying to blow us off and make us do, you know, conditioning and stuff. And it was like, man, like that.
Well, you know what's kind of interesting sometimes is that I think we all forget, you know, coaches, whether, you know, coaches got to start somewhere. You know, it was Coach Wolford's first job, or first head coaching job, that is. And, you know, he was growing into that role and had some staff changes, you know, almost every year he was there, and was kind of probably in a comfort zone with you guys. He'd been with you for a couple of years. And, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I mean, I think it's much like I'm sure Coach Phillips has spoke to us when he was on the show about the locker room, how he felt good about the locker room. And I think it showed that the seniors, you know, we'll talk a little later about last season, but, you know, you guys were able, remember when we were 4-0 and beat Pitt, beat Northern Iowa. I mean, right? Or no, I'm thinking that was 12. So
yeah, 12.
But 13, your senior year at one point, I mean, we were 8-1, 8-1, you know, and I mean, you get there with guys like you bringing along a Martin Ruiz, you know, bringing along a Stubbsy, those kind of guys. And so I think that's what Coach G was probably heading towards is how do you develop a locker room when half your guys leave? I can't imagine it, you know?
Right.
Sal, did we lose Coach Z or he's trying to get him back, but
he's going to try one more time, and if
Okay.
it doesn't work, he's just going to call me and we'll finish it over the phone.
Okay.
That works.
So he's trying one last
Well,
hurrah.
it's awesome. It's awesome hearing about Coach Paterno, you know, getting into his house and recruiting him and, you know, doing that visit and stuff. And I know people, Cyril, probably younger than us, you know, that have a little bit different image of what that statue of him looks like. But man, he was the top of the world for a long time, decades,
For sure.
right?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, you think about it, Cheney High School had guys like Bear Bryant come to Cheney and recruit. There were two brothers that played, one at Texas A&M and then one at Alabama. And then you had these run of players that went to Pitt and won a national championship in 1976. And Youngstown Cheney's own Matt Kavanaugh was on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Wow.
Oh, we got him there, Sal?
Just real quick, mic check. Coach, do you hear everyone okay?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get back into Kurt's question because we're just getting good.
Yeah, Coach, we were just talking about the culture, and you were getting ready to talk about the culture in your locker room at Penn State.
I don't know where my phone's sputtering out at, but, you know, I often tell a lot of folks, my class national championships, and the reason was we had a great locker room. My years in between, my sophomore and junior years, man, we just didn't have the leadership. We didn't have a locker room. We didn't hang out with each other. We didn't do things together. It was really splintered, and that's what our record was, splintered. I mean, we were Penn State. We were 6-5, 7-5 one year, and 8-4 the other. You know, we're used to going 10-1, 11-0, all that kind of good shit. So it makes a difference. The players that you have, the culture that you breed, and again, your strength coach is so important because all the time that individual spends with them, and then as a staff, everybody, you gotta all be on the same page. All got to be speaking the same language, and that's what I see Doug is working on now, and trying to getting all of us to work together as one huge cog, man. We're just one big wheel, and we're going to turn and turn and turn, and we're going to go. And I'm looking forward to it. Again, I've only been here a short period of time, but I can see these kids working their ass off, and seems like a really good culture in the locker room.
Love that. And I'm actually going to skip over to Cyril's question, but I think mine's more of a comment than a question. Coach, one thing that we always talk about on this show and we beat the desk about is winning on the road. And we went 0-6 last year and on the road. And I saw actually last time you were with us, you went to South Dakota State and won. And I'm pretty sure since they joined the conference, that's the only time that's ever been done. So we're looking forward to hopefully having you help us figure out how to win on the road.
This conference is a great conference. I love the Missouri Valley Conference. Since I left, every day during the season, I'm looking at the standings, the scores, because it is such a fun conference we play in. And yeah, I remember that game. I remember that game very well in South Dakota State. And winning on the road is very crucial. And in this league, it's very, very tough. And we have to find a way. My understanding is the second halves weren't that explosive or that good for us this past year. And we're working on figuring out why, how and why, and what do we have to do to play a complete game. And really, more than that, all three phases just playing together for 4 quarters. And if I think that's more the key from just some getting of the things that happened last year that we have to get much better at this year.
Cyril, in question.
Yeah, Coach Z. You said you've only been around for about a week in the stadium there, but have you had a chance to watch the 2024 film? And if you have, what do you think are some opportunities you're going to do to overhaul the secondary? Do you think that it needs a complete overhaul, or do you think it's like a fine tweaking thing? We know traditionally the secondary is dubbed the hardest position to play. I think that it's the position that gets the most easily exposed, especially with the way offenses are ran today. But, what are your thoughts on the 24 film if you've watched it?
Yeah, no, I've been watching a ton of it, man. I've been watching a ton of it with John and Trent and Ray and Shep, all the coaches there, Danny, and we're watching. We're all talking about things, and we're just fine tuning, I would say, Kyle or Kurt. I'm sorry, we're just fine tuning. I don't think there's anything major that has to be changed. I'll say this, and I do believe that the communication in the back end, I don't think that was very good. I think there were too many mistakes, and this, again, I'm not pointing fingers. These are things that we are talking about as a group as we sit in there these last couple of weeks. So just the fine tune, the base is there. It's there. We just got to fine tune it. And we got to have much, much better communication across the board so that 11 players can do their job. And then the other big thing, too, is, when you play this game, you only get one play at a time. You can't think of everything else out there. I mean, it's one play, it's one formation. Who's going to move? Who's going to change my world? Who's going to change my call? And it's more of everybody learning how to talk themselves through the play so that I'm not thinking during the play. I'm just reacting during the play. And I think that's a big part of what we've got to get better at, too. So understanding what the offense is, understanding the movement they're giving us, and then the communication to get better so that when all that occurs, again, you're just you're just playing. You're just playing. And that's what it's going to happen.
No, I love that. That makes me feel better. I mean, we've had the talent. If it's just an education thing and getting guys to understand their job, that's what I've been saying. Is it's tough to get guys in a season and to have them gel and understand their position. And at times, we talked about all last season, it looked as if they were thinking too much and not playing and reacting. So hopefully, we got a spring ball to figure that out, and then we got a summer camp. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, big time.
Kurt, Cyril, any Instagram or YouTube questions from the fans for Coach?
Yeah, I think most of them got answered by Coach already, but the overwhelming favorite was, is Yosteria going to sponsor team dinners weekly?
Yosteria is going to be there forever. Right?
Beautiful.
You got to go down pre-game and a post-game. You got to go.
Perfect, man.
Done deal.
Yeah. We're hitting that up in February. We got to, boys.
Cyril, anything?
KP wants to know if KP wants to know if you crossed paths with Stump Mitchell when you were with the Cardinals.
Absolutely.
There you go, KP.
Stump and I played together, I want to say 2 years. 2 years ago, God, you talk about great players. I mean, you had Stump Mitchell, you had Roy Green. You got the quarterback, who's the damn quarterback, the legend. Remember Gary Hogaboom? Remember that name?
Oh no, Dan, do you?
Yeah, I'm the old guy on this show, Coach Z. So these guys, they don't remember Gary Hogaboom. So heck yeah.
You guys wouldn't remember that name. So, I mean, how about Dan Fouts? You guys know Dan Fouts?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
as a commentator.
Yeah.
He was one hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, guys, that's the crazy thing about, you just, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, and it's like, I remember growing up, my dad asked me, hey, you know this? I said, nah, Pops, but I know this guy. For the kids today, it's kind of funny for me because, shoot, man, they have no idea. The names that I would mention, they'd have no idea. I get a chuckle out of it.
We know Dan Fouts from the movie The Water Boy. I think that's how I first saw him.
That's right.
They don't remember when he played at Oregon, Coach Z. They don't remember.
Oh, God. Anyway, to close things out, Coach, this is usually Kurt's segment I'm taking from him. It's just it's a rapid fire, quick answer, multiple choice questions. We'll start easy and they kind of get tough, but we won't hold you to any of these answers, so it's okay. But real quick, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Hunting or fishing?
Coffee.
Fair. Would you? And now I remember playing basketball with you. Would you rather play basketball or bocce ball?
Basketball.
Okay, because it's getting a little tough now. Who do you think is a better practicing Catholic, Ron Stoops or Jerry Osowski?
I go with Ronnie on that.
That's fair. He used to do my ashes on Wednesday, but
Yeah.
Jerry, I sat with him on the plane. He always did the Hail Mary.
The rosary,
flight.
Sal, the rosary?
Yeah.
You're looking for
I'm
rosary.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, good one, practicing Catholic.
Yeah, I didn't put my name down. Better food, Royal Oaks or the MVR?
Oh, man, you trying to get me in trouble?
Yeah, the Cassis family going to come after you.
Yeah, so will JFK.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, how about this? If you want great wings, you go to Royal Oaks. You want good Italian food, you go down to MPR.
Fair
There we
answer.
go. There we go.
Better. Which high school has a better football legacy, Cheney or Colonel Mooney?
Oh, God. If you're talking about high school and winning state championships, there's no question it's Cardinal Mooney. And if you're talking about back in the day, getting guys up into that NFL league, I think the hat goes off to Cheney on that one.
There's no doubt. There's got to be more Cheney dudes in the NFL than Mooney over the years. Got to be.
I would agree, Copper. I would agree. But I got to say this: like, if you look in the recent, you look at Johnny Simon, you look at Ish.
Sure.
My son got a splash in it. So Kyle McCarthy.
Sure.
Well, who was a more fun head coach to coach under, Jim Harbaugh or Andy Reid?
Jim.
Bigger rivalry, Ursuline versus Mooney or the Eagles versus the Steelers?
Mooney, Ursuline. Big time.
Who's got a bigger heart, Roland Smith or the Pope?
Oh, that's rolling.
Now here's the one that I just to get a reaction value from my co-host. Who has a better safeties coach, the Kansas City Chiefs or the University of Kentucky Wildcats?
Kansas City Chiefs, without a doubt.
It's funny you say that because the Chiefs coach told me Kentucky.
Don't tell Frankie I said that.
And then lastly, speaking of the Chiefs, Super Bowl pick, Chiefs or Eagles?
I'm going with the Birds.
Fair enough.
Feel a little upset coming.
Love it. Well,
Yeah.
as we sign you off, any last words for Penguin Nation and the listeners that they should know?
Yeah, and I don't know if I got lost in translation there with the phone issue I had, but Justin Haycock is our running back coach, and I find that really cool that he is Jeff's son, he is John's nephew, and he's our new running back coach. I just thought it was really cool that we got another Haycock up there at YSU.
Wow, that's breaking news for us, Coach Z. Thank you.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. What's cool about this one too? Well, I found out, his dad coached at Muskegon. His uncle coached at Ohio State, and obviously, John, he's still coaching. And John's a great dude. John hired me and all that good stuff. Good people. But it's funny that I found out that John and his brother were recommending other coaches for the same job. Never once mentioned their nephew, Justin.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Well, that's the type of guys John and Jim are. Would have been John and Jim, right? Jim's the brother. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about, go get this job, son. Go get it like you know how to go get it.
Right.
I think that's really cool.
That is.
That is really cool. Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Well, Coach, we appreciate it. And thank you for bearing through all the technical difficulties with us. You're always welcome on this show, and you're definitely beloved by the podcast and the fans, and we're happy you're back.
So, thank you, Kurt Copper. Great to see you and hear your voice. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you and spending more time with you guys. And again, my wife and I are really excited about what's going down, and look forward to being back in Youngstown, helping this team get back into the playoffs and into that championship game.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Good luck to you, Coach.
Good luck, Coach. We love you, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
You too.
Hey, Coach.
All right. So that was Coach Z bearing with us through the phone difficulties. I hope that sound ended up being okay. Not sure what it's going to be like, but let us transition. All right. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Youngstown State finished 4-8. We're going to have an entire show recapping last year. But we finished 3-5 in the conference. Just to kind of review how the season went, our 4 wins were Valparaiso, Indiana State, North Dakota in overtime, and then we capped it off with another overtime win in Northern Iowa. Unfortunately, we had lost to Villanova, Duquesne, Pitt, Missouri State, South Dakota State, South Dakota, Illinois State, Southern Illinois. Kind of, I won't say unfolded, but it was a pretty good team that it was kind of crazy to look back. And I saw we're 4-8. I was actually shocked. I thought, we were closer to 500. But just real quick takes, 'cause I know we're going to go overtime. Guys, starting with Dan, what just real quick, high point, low point of the season, and what's the number one thing we need to kind of home down on for before next season?
Yeah, sorry, real quick. The high point was Northern Iowa. I mean, it was the end of the year, and I thought it just because we finished the year out on a win, beating a team we've always struggled against. It was an overtime win. It was a great game, but we ended on a high note. I thought the low point, unfortunately, was Duquesne, a team that ended up having a good year, but we should have won that game. And I think going forward, hopefully with this new offensive coordinator, and what we brought him in here for is that we're going to be an offense that starts fast and then finishes second halves, that we can't have those lulls where we go a quarter or two without scoring. So that's my hope there for the offense, that it becomes a scoring offense and a consistently high scoring offense.
Cyril?
Yeah, I'm gonna second the high point is not only did we beat Northern Iowa in overtime to finish the season, we had 2 overtime wins. I never played an overtime game. I don't think we were in an overtime game in the 5 years that we were there. So for those guys to battle through that adversity to one get into overtime, and at the time that they were playing North Dakota, they were the number 5 team in the country, and to get that win, and then to finish strong in the last game of the season and get another overtime win, definitely a high point. Like that, just the guys didn't quit, and we were in a lot of close games. And to Sal's point, like this team, it's hard to say like this team's better than the record states, but you take away one bad Pittsburgh blowout and the South Dakota State blowout, we're kind of in every single game in the fourth quarter. So what sucks about this kind of era of football is we're going to lose guys that we went through that with, and we're going to bring in new guys that didn't go through that with us. So how do we really develop and gel and take those learning points into the next season with new guys? And that's kind of, I guess, the low point for me is losing guys that we went through that with, that we battled with, and we don't get to see where it goes next season. It's going to be a completely new team. Every team's new, but when you bring guys that went through that back, it sets up something, in a building culture and building resiliency. I mean, Kurt and I went through a 3-8 season, and then we were, I think, 6-5, Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were one game out of each playoffs. We don't want to talk about it. We were screwed by the committee. I'm going to come out and say it. Junior year, we were screwed. Senior year, we were screwed. But so we'll see how it goes into the next season. Another weird thing about this is if you look at the conference standings, you have 3 teams that finished 7-1, 2 teams that finished 6-2, and then the next closest team was Youngstown State that finished 3-5. So there was a huge drop off in the conference there, and it's unfortunate that we were the top team out of the bottom teams. So not a place I want to be at.
That's a great point. Curdy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Cyril said and DK said is pretty much what I'm going to say. You and I felt like my high point of the year, the low point of the year was Duquesne. If I had to pick another low point, it would be the fact that we did not compete at all with Pitt. And I personally, and I think this podcast would agree, we like to see where we measure up against Power 4 competition, whatever that may be. We at least feel like we want to be in the game for 2 to 3 quarters and have a chance to keep it close and maybe pull one out. We know we're not going to compete with them financially, budget-wise, recruiting-wise, transfer portal-wise, but, that's kind of been our measuring stick. And so that was disheartening watching that one this season. But off-season moves, it's Cyril, I can't echo it enough, man. The way that you can develop these kids, it's going to be, you're going to rewrite the playbook every single year. And there's no manual that keeps those memories that you had from the previous year with those guys in the locker room that you can take and, overachieve. So how is the offensive coordinator going to continue to develop Bo? How are the defensive coaches going to continue to communicate better? How is Coach Phillips trying to keep these players, our best players, here without leaving too much? And, something I wrote in my notes tonight, and I'll finish up, but one of our best and most productive NFL players currently and in recent history, Jaleel McLaughlin, was a D2 transfer in. So where are we going to hit again? And I'm not saying we got to go out and get Jaleel, but if we're losing some of our better players that we can't develop, we better be filling in with talent that we got, like Jaleel. I'm not saying he has to be the NCAA all-time rusher, but we need to find somebody to fill some holes. And I'm sure the coaches are doing all that they can. But like Coach Z was saying, it's a little bit of a gamble out there. You don't know what you're getting character-wise. You can talk to their coaches, but you don't know how they're going to respond. And just like Kyle said, this is a conference where you can go 7-1 and 3-5, and it could be 10 plays that determine that. So, I hope. I know they're busting their butts right now doing it, but there's just no answer right now. It's the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, good point on the transfer portal. I think we are, we just in general, since we were there, we're better off with guys transferring up to us than people transferring down. And it looks like a lot of these guys are transferring up. So that's definitely good to see that we're picking their talent away from them. Real quick on my low point, I thought it was actually at South Dakota State because I thought that there was a point there the team just quit. I thought that was low. I mean, at least at Duquesne, we were trying to win. I mean, at South Dakota State, I was like, oh boy. Then my high point was actually North Dakota. It looked like after being on a losing streak there, I mean, we only won one game out of the previous 5 going into that North Dakota game, and it was a much needed celebration in overtime. That if we didn't win that game, we would have gone on a 5-game losing streak, potentially a 6. We may not even showed up for Northern Iowa if we didn't show up on North Dakota. So I think that was a big saver that potentially helped us from going 2-10. But so that was kind of my high and my low. Cop, you hit it. The biggest change. Coach Troy's a great coach. I mean, he really has been there for Doug from day one. So hate to see him leave, but these 15 play drives are not going to win a national championship. I don't, like Dan always says, we're not the coaches. We don't know the answers, but I just know that, it's not the answer. And so we have a new coordinator in. I'm hoping he can make big plays down the field and not nickel and dime and pick up a few yards here and there, because that's not gonna work the entire season. So that's kind of
Sal, you brought up a good point real quick. You brought up a good point about Coach Troy. He's a good coach. I mean, what he did with Mitch was incredible. Mitch set some records, and then we're bringing in a guy, Coach Yursich, who's been at some really big places and wasn't somewhere last year. So you guys all know this coaching odyssey, it's crazy. Sometimes there's just a need for a change or maybe a new perspective, a new fit. But of course, we're thankful for what Coach Troy did. And the beauty is, as Bill Parcells always used to say, we're fixing to find out. So we'll see how we do.
Braungart's talented. Let's see if someone could bring the talent out of him. Let's transition. Missouri Valley Football Conference, real quick, has some changes. Cop, you are our professional MC, so you may need to help us on some names. South Dakota, Bob Nielsen, who had been there, he retired, replaced by Travis Johansson. Hired, he was actually their defensive coordinator, been there since 2019, familiar face. South Dakota State, Jimmy Rogers, who was just the head coach for a couple years, he's off to Washington State. Hats off to him. He is replaced by Dan Jackson. He was formerly at Idaho as their defensive coordinator, but he is a Jackrabbit alum, and he was a former DB coach there, so he's very familiar with the program, one of their own. North Dakota, help me, Dan. Kyle
Schweigert
is out, and he is being replaced by Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was the defensive corner at San Diego State, but he is also a North Dakota alum and former defensive coordinator, so he's another guy coming home. Northern Iowa, Mark Farley, who we gave a so long to, beat him in overtime on his last game. He finally retires after decades and decades of being a pain in our backside. Todd
Stepsis.
I think he froze.
Okay, thank you. He comes in, and he is coming from Drake, where he was the head coach and has had a lot of success. And if you have success at Drake, you're a hell of a ball coach. So that is someone to look out for. Missouri State, as we know, is off to the CUSA. So we will not be seeing them. Searle, just real quick, 30 seconds. Any hire that you are impressed with, or anyone that you're not impressed with?
It's not necessarily whether I'm impressed or not with these guys, or worried about. But, I think the Dan Jackson hire at South Dakota State is interesting. Obviously, we talk about North Dakota State always hiring from within North Dakota State and having ties to North Dakota State, and we've seen what they've done. And that's exactly what South Dakota State did, hiring Dan Jackson, former player, was Idaho DC, and Idaho was good the last few seasons in the FCS, like very good. So that's a guy that knows how to win. That's a guy that knows how to keep culture, build culture. So I don't think South Dakota State is, going to fall off at much at all. I think they're going to pick up right where they left off. And I'm interested to see what Todd Stepsis does at Northern Iowa, because I would like to think that winning back-to-back Pioneer Conference championships is not going to be good enough in the Missouri Valley. So we'll see how he does with a program of that caliber. Northern Iowa's kind of been on a little bit of a decline over the last couple of years. So we'll see if he can build it back or not.
Dan?
Yeah, quickly, I agree with Kyle on the North. I'm probably most interested in to see what happens at Northern Iowa because of the 30 years of consistency they've had. And this guy might do a better job. But that one interests me a lot. I'm surprised about Coach Nielsen stepping down at South Dakota. I mean, that guy, he won at Western Illinois, won at South Dakota. I would think he can still coach. Maybe he just doesn't like this transfer portal era, so and all that stuff. And I'm just kind of curious if, I think they called him Bubba Schweigert out there at North Dakota. Did they kind of want him out of there? All of a sudden, I mean, they had a good team and have had good teams since he's been there, and all of a sudden, boom, we beat him, and they kind of struggled after that. And I don't know, maybe there's a little more behind that out there. And what are they again? The Fighting Warhawks, I think they're out there. Or it used to be the Fighting Sioux, but something like that. But so that's my take on those conference ones. I agree that Dakota's, South Dakota State's not going to fall off. I kind of surprised Jimmy Rogers got out of there when he did. He had things rolling again, but it is what it is there. But it'll be interesting to see.
Hey, one last quick thing before Kurt jumps in there. It was interesting, the Bob Nielsen retirement, because they had just signed him at the beginning of the season to an extension through 2028.
Best time to retire.
Wow.
So I don't know. Hopefully it's not health related. Maybe it is a transfer portal related thing.
Yeah.
Because it's been a point of contention on the show. Sal says they stink. I say they didn't. They went to the Final Four. So he was a good coach. He had that program pointed in the right direction. So,
well, just think about what he did with Western Illinois, which was a doormat after the late 90s. And then, we were beating South Dakota, off and on, or especially when they first got in the league. And then he goes there, and they're pretty dang good. So, interesting.
Ready?
Yeah, real quick, just happily laying out the royal purple carpet for Mark Farley to leave, because he's just kind of dominated Youngstown State football. So we beat him once. We're glad to send him off with another loss. But I think that program is in a lot of trouble. I think the last 5 to 10 years they've played multiple money games throughout the year, which is interesting, and they've gotten some talent but never really done anything with it. And so I don't know if that athletic department was not wanting to fire him or kick him out and move him along, but very intrigued by that one. Also very intrigued by Missouri State, just looking up their schedule and what they have this year. I'm the guy on the podcast who thinks, hey, let's make the FBS jump, right? So this is kind of the free Hulu trial. Let's see what this similar caliber type of program can go do. Are they going to the Wolves right now, or are they going to try to find some success? And, they play USC this year. They play Marshall. They play SMU, and they have Tennessee Martin. So, that looks like they're non-conference this year. And so they can measure up against a Big Ten team in the USC, measure up against an SMU team that was an ACC playoff contender last year in the final 12 teams, as well as Tennessee Martin and Marshall, probably around the same caliber as us. So do they get rocked in those 4 games and go 0-4, or are they competitive and find a way to go 2-2 and, stay competitive with USC? So that's something that really interests me this year.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, Curdy. Missouri State's a good measuring stick. We're about as good as they are. So how they fare in the CUSA is probably how we would have fared in the CUSA this year.
Sure.
So something to pay attention to. I'm the opposite of you guys. I think Northern Iowa made the best hire. I think Mark Farley, as we knew, was beyond his prime. He needed to go, and he retired. And then Todd Steps is, again, you went at Drake, and I believe Drake's in Iowa, so he knows the area, can recruit the area. He seems like a young coach that's going to be motivated. I think he's going to bring that program back strong, and that's something to be fearful of if he has success there. Because I definitely don't want them to be another pain in our thorn for the next 3 decades. North Dakota, definitely the least impressed. Not that any of these were bad hires, but the 3 Dakota schools definitely, when we say in-house, they brought back their own kind, their own, alumni back. He was kind of one that San Diego State, not very impressed. I guess it's by default. He was the worst of the hires. I think South Dakota made the safest hire. They kind of hired the guy, I think he's the assistant head coach, actually, to kind of just step in and take over. So they'll be cruising about where they left off. South Dakota State will be interesting what they end up doing, because I think they're going to have to be, I don't want to say rebuilding, but they'll be reloading. So we'll see what type of talent they reload with. But anyway, I know we're kind of going overtime, but real quick, just 30 seconds. We're going to hit on next season. It's looking like Mercyhurst, Robert Morris, Michigan State, Towson, South Dakota State, North Dakota, Illinois State, Murray State, North Dakota State, Southern Illinois, Indiana State, and at Northern Iowa to end the season. Again, we play UNI to end the season. Just real quick, what are the expectations? What game do you kind of have highlighted already, Kurt?
Yeah, I think we know what we're going to get with Mercyhurst and Robert Morris. I think we're going to go out there. We're going to take care of business. I think our talent's going to take over. Coach Phillips is going to have us ready. They're going to have a great training camp. Michigan State, we can kind of all assume what we may get at that point. And so, is that a measuring stick game? We know it's a money game. Are we going to be competitive? If I had to circle something, I would circle Towson, the off week, and South Dakota State. And that's the 2.5 to 3 weeks. That's really going to be a defining moment for us. Towson plays in a league that's similar to ours. We're not familiar with that opponent. We've played 3 games. We've made our adjustments. We have our best personnel on the field. How are we going to compete at Towson on the road? Something that we've struggled. We're going to be able to communicate it. We're going to be able to take care of the football. How are we going to respond to the bye week? And what are we going to do against South Dakota State, right? We know the Bison won it this year, but South Dakota State, hoping with a little drop off, we have them coming at home. What's that 3-week stretch look like? That's what I'm going to circle. That's what I'm going to look forward to. Hopefully gives us the measuring stick for how we're going to compete in the league the rest of the year.
Cyril?
Yeah, we're going to circle Towson as well. Unfamiliar team. It's not a pushover team. It's not a cupcake layup. It's similar to the Villanova game. And then we got an opportunity to play 2 Final Four teams on this roster or on this schedule, right? So we got South Dakota State and the defending national champions North Dakota State. So I do have North Dakota State because I am trying to get out to that game. Kyle Kronovich, give me and Kurt a call. We're trying to get out to that game for the podcast and get back out to the Fargo Dome. So hopefully we have a more competitive team. Are we doing the schedule thing right now? Because are we doing the predictions or no? Are we saving that? Because just
saving that.
All right, well, I'll save it because I got it written down. And it's all going to depend on how the spring unfolds and how summer goes. But I think the first 6 weeks of the season, the first 5 games in that 6-week span is really going to shape how the team is going to finish and how well and how far they've come from last season.
Right. Copper.
Yeah, I'm with you guys so far. No doubt that I look at it. I expect big things. We got a quarterback back, which is always the driving force these days with a team. And we have got to be 3-1 at worst going into the bye, because then we get into conference play. So the Towson State game, or Towson, I'm sorry, they used to be Towson State. is going to really a measuring stick, probably that point of the season, to see how we can get through the rest of it. And, we can't, much like last year, we've kind of lost our way with the Duquesne game. So this Towson game on the road, got to win it and then get some rest and then go into the gauntlet of the league. So to me, it's real simple. How do we come out after 4 weeks going into a bye? We have got to be at least 3-1. If we're 3-1, then we could go make some hay and see what happens. But to sum it up real quickly, that's to me right now is the barometer for where we're going to be.
Yeah, I was thinking Towson myself as well. However, I'm on a curveball, you guys. We are at Illinois State October 18th. And as Cheryl said earlier, with that Missouri Valley football standings last year, there's a big drop off. We're at the top of the bottom half, and Illinois State's at the bottom of the top half. That makes sense. So there's a big difference there. We'll probably be 1-1 in the conference at that point. Hopefully we could be 2-0, but maybe 1-1. Can we go on the road to Illinois State and win that game? Because if we don't, I think we're going to stay at the bottom. That's kind of the deciding game on, are we going to make that leap to be on the top half of the conference this season? And that's kind of the game that I think is going to put us over that hill to put us in the conversation with those playoff teams that are on the bubble and or win the conference. That's my 2 cents. Anyone have anything else? Transition. All right. Curdy and Cyril, any Instagram question, comments, shout outs so far?
No, I think we got them mostly covered with Coach.
Same.
All right. Dan, any shout outs, and do you have the info for the golf outing to give info on that for Matt Hogg?
I spoke with Matt. I got to get some more details on that. I know we're trying, members of this podcast, to get down there for that event and either be there the night before or be there the day of and have a little podcast going. I know Coach Trustle's going to be there. I believe he is, that is. But for a shout out, I think we would all agree, is there not a bigger former YSU player, coach, more importantly, guest on this show that is in the mix of history right now than Donald DeLisio? I mean, he's trying to do something that nobody has ever done before, the three-peat. And so we all wish Donald good luck, of course, and so proud of him. But, man, what he's on the cusp of is historical. So we're all pulling for him. But we got to get some more info from Matt, some details. We could share it on the next show that we have. But I know it's a great event down there in the Lauderdale area, right, Sal? Or you guys may have known this too.
Boca
I believe
Raton.
it's right, Boca, Lauderdale area there for that outing. And there'll be a
Boca
strong
Vista.
Oh yeah, there you go with the with the Costanzas, but
backyard.
Yeah, but with there'll be a strong contingency of guys, those Florida guys and guys from up here that'll be down there during those eras of the 80s, 90s, and all those years. So there'll be some really, really good dudes there. So we got to try and figure out and see if we can make this all work.
Yeah, and when we get that info, Kirk could post on Instagram. That is the YSU alumni golf outing we're talking about. I believe it's March 6th. There's still time to sign up. There is gambling odds. I believe the Brian Kopp law firm is the highest odds to win the tournament. So if you want to put your bets in, you can go ahead and do so. But this podcast will be back together. Again, reminder, February 15th is the Hall of Fame banquet. Our very own Chris Elkins is going to the Hall of Fame. That is open. Anyone that wants tickets, y'all can go online and get tickets from Youngstown State to be a part of that award ceremony. And, of course, congrats to Chris. Anything else? You already lock it up?
Lock it up.
Lock it up.
Let's lock it up. And once again, you have been listening to the Youngstown Penguin Football Podcast. Please follow us on Instagram at Whitetown Penguin Podcast. And we are on YouTube Live. Please give us a like and a subscribe. But as always, that is Kurt Hess, that is Dan Kopp, that is Kyle Straw, and I am Sal Guardo. And as always, go Penguins.
Way to go, man.
That was a good
Hell
one.
of a run.
Nice job.